storyteller herself, and today Jessica Piscitelli is with us from Virginia.
Hi, how are you doing?
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Was the traffic heavy coming over today?
No, not too bad, not at this hour.
Oh,
so.
good, good. Now, you started a group, Better Said Than Done. What was your idea when you decided to start that, Better Said Than Done?
Well, I am in Virginia, as you mentioned, and the idea was really just to have something local, because the storytelling in this area is in Maryland, it's in D.C., and so far as I know, there wasn't really a regular show going on in Virginia.
Yeah, and how long ago did you start this, Jessica?
May 2011, so it's been over a year.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're doing very well. You're out there, you've had press coverage, you know, you have a lot of tellers. Do you have regular tellers, or how do you operate the way that you get your tellers?
Well, I do. I have a pool of tellers that I email every month and say, here's our theme for next month. Do you want to be in the show? And then people come up to me at the shows and tell me that they'd like to tell a story, and we like to get at least one new person a month just to try to build our pool and to expand the types of stories we're getting and where they're coming from.
Right. And do you see your audience growing, or is it staying stable?
No, it's definitely grown. Actually, we've grown a lot in the place where we have a lot of our shows, Epicure Cafe. The last two shows, it's been standing room only, and it's actually a little bit making me a little nervous, because I think that we're going to be filling that venue every month, so we'll need to find a bigger venue at some point.
Well, you know, because you want to get more people, or why would you get a bigger venue? I just want to know what you're thinking about. Why would you feel like you had to go to a bigger venue?
Well, you know, and I love Epicure, so I don't necessarily have to go to a different venue on a monthly basis, but there's just many occasions where I felt like there's the possibility that we're turning people away at the door.
It doesn't feel good, does it?
Yeah, so I don't want people to stop coming to the shows because they can't get into the shows.
Okay,
so
good.
Yeah.
Now, you tell stories, you write stories, and you write bigger than radio commentaries. You do radio commentaries, but you're also a writer. Which came first? How did you come to storytelling?
Well, I've been writing since I was a kid. I mean, I actually have some paperwork from my mom. When she passed away, I got all those things that moms save, and I have stories I wrote in second grade. So I've been writing since I was a little kid, and it was all fiction and poetry.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then in college I studied filmmaking, so then I wrote screenplays for a long time. And then storytelling, I really didn't start storytelling until 2007, when I went to a Speakeasy DC show.
How did that feel to you when you took that out to standing in front of the microphone yourself to tell the story?
It was fun. I mean, one of the things I tell people about, I think, that attracts me as well as other writers to storytelling is, I mean, I've been trying to get published since I was, you know, probably 19, and it's really difficult. But when you tell a story, you've immediately shared something you've written with, you know, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people. So you're sort of, in a way, immediately published.
So you do write your stories first?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, I'm taking a memoir class right now, which I'm finding very interesting, because that's the business of my storytelling. And I'm noticing that I don't write mine. And I believe that telling, or the oral, is the precursor to writing. That it's easier to talk it out first and then write it. Now, you work in a different way.
Yeah, I do both. Actually, you've inspired me over the last year to try to do more of the talking out loud.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah.
So I've been integrating that a little bit. So I'll talk it out, and then I'll write it down, and then I'll talk it out again. But I feel like if I don't do that step where I write it out, I miss some of the little callbacks and details that I'd like to see in my stories. Right,
and that makes a lot of sense, because the writer, in what I see in other people's work who are writers, there's the finesse in the words.
Yeah,
that really, if you can keep that and get it into the telling without making it, you know, a read story, then it's beautiful.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, that's my challenge, is always, I definitely have some stories where I feel like it sounds a little bit essay-ish, and I know that that's a weakness of mine as far as storytelling goes, that sometimes I do sound like I'm reading.
But that's practice,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I you know, that I'm saying this and saying it for our audience, just so that they'll get more of a sense of how each individual storyteller works differently, and that there are tricks, there are things that we use to make our stories better, or to make them fit us. You know, what's something that might come to mind that's been a surprising thing you've learned the last year with Better Said Than Done?
I guess it never fails to surprise me how many people love storytelling and how few people know about it. I still, to this day, every time I mention Better Said Than Done or storytelling or what we're doing, everyone asks me, like, well, what is that? And it seems like there's so many people out there who have no idea what it is, but then the random people who stumble upon our shows always, you know, come back because they fall in love with it. So
well, and just Saturday night, I was at a storytelling in Bethesda, and several of the people that were there had heard about it because they were at Better Said and Done a few weeks ago. So that all of this is spreading an awareness of storytelling all across the greater DC area. Yeah. Now, I know that you're working on a story right now. We're going to tell together at Friendship. And you're going to go from a 12-minute story to, what, a half an hour?
Hopefully.
Of course you are. Of course you are. How do you approach that? What are you doing to prepare for that?
Well, I am taking the bones of the original story, so it's a story I've told before, but much shorter, obviously, and I'm going to build on that. That story was about an eviction process that I had to evict a tenant, and I really, to get it down to 12 minutes, I cut out a lot of information, some of which is very funny, actually, and some of which is just more of that anger that I was telling you about, with the theme being about red.
Yes,
So I'm just going to add in all the details, and I will probably do a lot of writing on this one.
Well, you know, the whole thing, I'm fascinated to hear this story, the whole process. You were the evictor.
Yes.
That's a tough spot to take, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually that was a really hard story for me to write the first time, because of the way things have been going in the housing market in the last couple of years. You know, I felt like a victim in the whole situation because this person took advantage of me, but at the same time I needed to explain to people, like, just because I was evicting someone, I wasn't this horrible landlord. Like, this person really did terrible things to me and to my house. So that was a tough story to find the sort of sympathy vote in. So
right, but it must have been also, you must have had to get pretty angry to step up to do that. I mean, that was pretty brave. To move out and to, you know, move somebody out of the house. Do you give an insight in your story as to how you felt about all that happening?
Well, I gave a little bit in my last one. There will be a lot more of that in the next
good.
one. So
I'm looking forward to that. I've had to fire somebody, which was really a horrendous thing, but I've never experienced. Do you think maybe that this is why people are moving to lived stories? And the rise of really wanting to hear stories about how people have lived through things or have worked with life?
Yeah, well, you know, it's I actually just read this research that Harvard University did. I don't know if you read this. I read it in the week originally, and they were talking about comparing people's posting on Facebook to the feeling you get when you have sex. But the study was basically saying the same part of your brain lights up and gets happy when you talk about yourself and people listen. So I think that's part of why people like doing the storytelling, is because it makes them feel good to have other people listen and hopefully sympathize with what they're talking about.
But I think maybe where you're saying that what the study was saying was that the real key there is the listener.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't think y'all realize how important you are to what storytellers do. You know, that it's being listened to. that made the difference. That
yes,
sort
and
of the point?
actually in the study, they did the study where they had people just talking to talk and having no one there to listen, and then they had them talking to someone else, and it was a completely different experience. Their brains did not light up when they were talking and no one was listening. So
That's interesting.
you had to have someone listening to you.
Yeah. Well, that shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, but it's nice to have that confirmed. I mean, people, you feel better if somebody's hearing you out.
Yeah, yeah.
They're really listening and trying to be compassionate and understanding to what's happened to you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll hope that on October the 17th, a lot of people come to Friendship Village Community Center to hear what happened when you had to, was it a man or a woman you were evicting?
It was a woman.
Oh, wow.
And a child, too.
Yeah,
oh, wow. Yeah.
It gets better and better.
Yeah, I was evil.
No, I wouldn't say that. You must have been pretty seeing a lot of red.
Yeah,
seeing a lot of red. So, all right, so the thing that really intrigues me, and I'm so impressed with that you do with Better Said Than Done, is you come up with intriguing titles to put out for tellers to say, oh, I have a story that would fall under that umbrella. How do you do that?
A lot of it is just coming up with the idea from my head, and then some of it is I run it past a group of my friends and say, how does this sound? And then sometimes they come up with ideas. Actually, it's funny, next month, October's, is Where the Wild Things Are, and my friend Mary came up with that one because her husband has a great story for it, and he hasn't signed up yet, so I'm hoping he actually tells the story, because that's part of the reason we're having that show. And then, November, we're doing the show 2 days after Thanksgiving.
That's a tough time.
Yeah, well, yeah, so that one is called Stuffed, because I figure people will be in that mood.
We'll be stuffed.
Yeah,
we'll be stuffed.
So sometimes it's dependent on the time of the year. Last year we did the All in the Family was early in January, right after the holidays. So we sort of tied the theme in with getting over the holidays.
Right. So what are you going to do in December?
Oh, we're not doing a show in December because the week that we would normally be at Epicure is 2 days after Christmas.
So you're going to take a reasonable vacation.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that as the activity with storytelling heats up here in the area, which it is, it's amazing, it is, then we'll sort of have to, everybody will sort of have to look for where they're bumping up against everybody else.
Yeah.
Because right now we are sort of one big audience.
Yeah.
And I know I try to see as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Now you're going to tell us a story
today.
Yeah. And so we're going to move away just for a few minutes. Don't you go away, because Jessica will be right back, and she's going to tell you one of her stories.
Hey! So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
When I think of love, I think of dogs. If you are a dog person, you will know exactly what I mean when I say that no one will ever love you as much as your dog does. You are their parent, the leader of their pack, the giver of all things good, like butt rubs and chew toys. When they look at you, it's like they're shooting laser beams of love from their eyes. On my 26th birthday, my then boyfriend handed me an 8-week-old Labrador Retriever. As I held her against my chest and her little body snuggled up against me and her little nose nuzzled my cheek and her big eyes looked up at me and said, "I just met you and already I love you," I understood mother-daughter bonding, and so Zoe became my baby. About 2 years later, my mom, my real human mom, got sick and moved in with us, and she brought her dog, Doc. Now, some dogs, like Doc, think that they are cats, and they only love you when it's convenient for them. Doc does not tolerate unwarranted affection. If you try to pet him when he doesn't want it, he'll give you that look like he is so disappointed in you, and then he'll just walk away. Zoe, on the other hand, being a typical lab, demands affection at all times, to the point where one mommy isn't really enough for her. When my mom moved in, Zoe took one look at her, then at Doc, swung her big butt around, knocking Doc out of the way, and claimed my mother as her own. And my mom fell in love with Zoe. Now, Doc, being an almost 30-pound border collie, slept on the floor, and Zoe, being a 90-plus-pound lab, was, of course, a lap dog. So she became my mom's official lap warmer. Furthermore, she somehow managed to squeeze onto my mom's hospital bed every night, serving as bed warmer as well. My mom and Zoe became bosom buddies. About 3 weeks after my mom moved in, when she and Zoe had already pair bonded, my boyfriend decided to take Zoe and Doc to the dog park, something we had done all the time, but this time he had borrowed his sister's pickup truck for the weekend and thought it would be a good idea to put the dogs in the back. It was a terrible idea. As the truck was rounding the corner to go to the dog park, Zoe got so excited at the prospect of seeing her doggy friends that she couldn't wait. She jumped out of the moving truck. Her paw got caught in the gate. She slammed into the side of the truck and then dropped onto the moving pavement, scraping to a stop. Doc also jumped, but being a cat at heart, he landed on all fours. The doctor at the emergency room said that when Zoe fell, she ripped all the nerves in her right shoulder and would never be able to use her front right paw again. He said we needed to amputate before she started dragging the leg on the ground and caught an infection. But she wasn't dragging it yet. She held it in close, almost like it was latched to her and she couldn't put it down. So we decided to wait before discussing amputation any further. We brought Zoe home from the doggy hospital, cone on her head, no use of her leg, and she was just miserable. She didn't want to go for walks. She wasn't up for playing. She didn't even beg for cookies anymore. Her big Labrador eyes looked like they were filled with tears at all times. It broke my heart. It was like being stuck watching an ad for the ASPCA all day, every day. To make matters much, much worse, that same week we finally got my mom's prognosis, the result of weeks of testing. Stage 4 lung cancer. They gave her 4 months to a year to live, so basically a death sentence. My mother and my baby were both sick and hurting, and I was in the middle wanting to help, but with very little I could do for either of them. Fortunately, they didn't seem to need me all that much. Through mutual suffering, my mom and Zoe grew closer, became soulmates, and they helped each other get their lives back. My mom's prognosis was indisputable, but she made the most with the time she had left. And Zoe slowly started to be her old self again. She learned to hop around like a pro on 3 legs. She went for walks. She wrestled with her toys and with us, and most importantly, she started begging for cookies again. My mom and my baby, for a short while, were happy and more inseparable than ever. About 3 months later, my mom grew very weak and had a hard time navigating our single-family home, so she went to live with my sister in her apartment in Arlington. Doc and Zoe stayed behind, which didn't seem to bother Doc at all, but Zoe kept pacing around the house as if looking for my mom, wondering when her best friend was going to come home. A few days after the move, my mom started to decline. We didn't know how long she had left, but she was fading quickly. I brought Zoe to see her, hoping it would cheer both of them up. I mean, Zoe had been missing her favoriteest person, and when I brought her in, my mom was ecstatic. Zoe bounded over to her, but perhaps sensing that my mom, who was propped up sort of painfully on the couch, didn't need a lap warmer, Zoe just took a position by my mom's side where she sat there for hours while my mom pet her and Zoe soaked in the love and the affection. That was the last day my mom got out of bed. 2 days later, she passed away. Now, I think about this a lot, and I don't know what I believe. I don't know if I believe in an afterlife or a soul, but I know that some part of my mom left her body when she died. Not only because she literally shrank before our eyes when she passed away, but also because my brother's dog, who was alone in the room next door, let out a bark at the moment my mom died, like something had passed in front of him. And then there is what I believe to be the gift my mother left. You see, in the midst of the worst day of my life, we witnessed a miracle. After the funeral home had come and taken the body away, after all the arrangements were made, I went home to my house of dogs. Zoe came to greet me at the door, and for the first but not the last time in over 3 months, she walked on all 4 legs.
I want to see the world.
When you pick up a book
I used to read every night to all the younger kids.
and let your imagination break free, you won't believe how much fun it can be.
Let down your house!
Experience a world of adventure, excitement, and endless possibilities. Get tangled up in a good book. Explore new worlds. Read. Visit read.gov today.
We're back. Welcome back. Jessica, that was a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Yeah, that this is the kind of recounting of personal experience that touches an audience, does it? What's the response that you get to that story?
Well, I've only told it once before now, and I think it went over well. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a few people telling me that they got choked up, so.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Because you tell it, you've gotten it to the place where, doesn't the storyteller, there's a chance when you touch with that kind of material that you yourself will feel the emotion. How does that work for you?
Well, I will say for this story, for the one I've told in the past about my father passing away, like I will actually get choked up when I'm rehearsing it and when I'm telling it. I think it's okay, because I think that we are being personal and we are sharing a part of ourselves. So I think if I break down in tears, probably that's not going to make for a good performance, but I
Right.
think it's okay to get a little emotional.
Because it is a personal story. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. One of the things I wanted to go back and touch base with was you mentioned earlier that you're now having classes under the banner of Better Said Than Done. What made you decide to do that?
Actually, it was just people coming up to me at the shows and saying, "Do you guys teach that?" And they've been saying it for 6 months or so, and I've just been saying, "Well, no." So then I decided that, well, we should start teaching people.
Yeah. What kinds of things are you going to be teaching in your classes?
Well, our first one, the one on October 13th, is called Spotlight on You, and that's just storytelling 101, just the basics of storytelling structure, how you can structure a story, how you can develop a character and decide whose story you're telling, and just kind of the bare bones of what you need to understand about true personal storytelling.
Better said than done. Well, what I was saying was beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah, well, yes. There you go. You just taught the class.
No, not really. But you know that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
The structure, beginning, middle, and the end. You said something there that it has slipped, but what's really important in telling a personal story? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it is different from fiction writing, because with fiction you can do whatever you want. You know, it's not true. So you can make the story perfect, and real life isn't perfect. So in finding a personal story, sometimes the trouble is figuring out where to start it and where to end it. I mean,
Exactly.
I've told stories that spanned years, and you have to figure out where the character changes and what the character is, you know, the character of yourself or your friend or your parent, whoever's story you're telling, and then you have to work from there to figure out where it starts and where it ends.
Exactly,
So-
exactly. So what else are you going to do, or your other classes? You have more than one class.
We have an improv and storytelling class.
Interesting.
Yeah, one of our tellers also teaches for Washington Improv Theater, so she's going to teach a sort of combined how to tell a story without a script, how to perform without having something written out for you, and how to say yes to the experiences. So that's an improv meets storytelling class.
Yeah.
And then we're doing a storytelling for business class, which I've actually run a number of workshops because I own my own company, so I do a lot of business networking, and I've been to a bunch of different networking groups and run mini workshops on how to write a story for business.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that one as well.
That sounds like you're starting off with quite a nice slate
Yeah.
of classes that, I wish you well, that they draw people.
Thank you.
And I think the people who want to come, to tell there, The one last thing, we're running short on time, but I want to get this question in. I've watched what you do on Facebook. I've seen, you're sort of saying you're doing this and this. You are a very effective networker. So how do you see that works for you and Better Said Than Done, or for your business? Are you doing it for which?
That's interesting. I do a lot more in-person networking for business. So I spend a lot more time going to meetings to talk about Capture Video, my video company, than I do for storytelling. With storytelling, a lot of the networking happens from going to shows. So it's either going to shows or having a show, and then you talk to people after. But also with storytelling, it seems like social media is really effective. Whereas I don't know that so many people are going to see something I tweeted and then hire me as a videographer, but with Better Said Than Done, if I tweet something about an upcoming show or an upcoming class, I get more of a response.
It's more of a way to get the word out.
Yeah.
So it really depends on, I was thinking about this today, and you are very effective on Facebook, and I was thinking about how this works. It really is important for people to respond to that, isn't it? To understand that when they comment on what you've said, they share the message goes further.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. So today I posted photos from the last show that you were in, for example, and then I tagged all the people in those photos. And if those people, if their friends are all seeing those photos, then they might ask themselves, oh, why was my friend telling a story at this group called Better Said Than Done? And maybe the hope is that they would investigate, just like if you shared a post.
So it's really not a one-on-one conversation. It's a conversation meant to be extended to many more.
Yeah.
You can find out more about Better Said Than Done at bettersaidthandone.com. Jessica Piscitelli runs that. She writes a blog for it.
Yeah.
And gives you back reports. And the big thing that you do that's wonderful for the tellers and for other people is, what do you think?
Videotape?
The videotapes, yes. That y'all tape every story.
Yeah.
So if you've missed any in the past, you can have a chance to catch up on all the tellers. Jessica, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ellouise.
Yeah. Thank you, and please come back. We'll have another guest next time.